Listen here, ghetto trash. Brad hissed, leaning over the pregnant black woman's table at Atlanta's most exclusive restaurant. You think that fake designer dress fools anyone? This place is standards. Zara looked up calmly from her anniversary dinner reservation. Excuse me, you heard me. Take your food stamps and get out before I call security to drag you and your welfare baby out of here. The dining room fell silent. Wealthy white patrons turned to stare as Brad grabbed the ice water pitcher from her table. Maybe this will help you understand, he sneered, hurling the entire contents directly at her face. Ice water exploded across Zara's silk dress and dripped from her hair onto the marble floor. But instead of tears, something dangerous flickered her eyes as she slowly stood up. You have no idea who you just messed with. Have you ever watched someone's racism destroy their entire world in real time? 45 minutes earlier, Zara Mitchell had arrived at the Heritage restaurant with anticipation lighting up her dark eyes. She glided through the heavy oak doors, her hand resting tenderly on her 6-month pregnant belly, her custom maternity dress flowing like liquid silk as she moved toward the intimate corner table overlooking the city. This wasn't just another upscale dining establishment. The Heritage had served as Atlanta's beacon of excellence since 1952. Its elegant walls showcased a curated collection of vintage photographs documenting the city's evolution. Historic paintings of prominent families hung alongside powerful images of civil rights pioneers who had once gathered in these sacred rooms when segregation denied them service everywhere else in the South. Zara's attention caught on a particular photograph, a formal family portrait from 1955 displaying 3 generations of distinguished black men standing with unmistakable pride before the restaurant's original entrance. The youngest man in that photograph shared remarkable features with someone very dear to her heart, Mrs. Mitchell. The hostess materialized with a welcoming expression. Your preferred table is prepared. Thank you, Jessica. Is my husband still occupied with his meeting upstairs? Mr. Mitchell remains in the executive boardroom with the leadership team. Ma'am, would you like me to notify him of your arrival? That won't be necessary. He'll join me shortly. Zara settled into the luxurious velvet chair, the identical spot where Isaiah had proposed 5 years earlier on an equally magical evening. She retrieved her phone and messaged her sister, sitting at the same table where everything began. Cannot believe 5 years have passed since he proposed right here in this spot. The Heritage represented far more than a restaurant to the Mitchell family. It embodied heritage, struggle, and belonging all woven together. Every architectural detail had been meticulously preserved. The authentic crystal chandeliers, the hand-carved architectural moldings, the mahogany bar that had witnessed both the segregation era and contemporary power dynamics. The menu still featured treasured recipes transmitted through generations, and the wine cellar contained bottles that had been maturing since before integration transformed the South. However, not everyone valued this profound history. Brad Morrison had been employed at the Heritage for precisely 3 months, and according to his perspective, the restaurant's clientele had experienced a disturbing decline ever since his arrival. At 26, he'd been raised in affluent suburbs, harboring beliefs that his whiteness automatically entitled him to access spaces like this, while certain other people needed to prove their worthiness. He'd been voicing complaints to anyone willing to listen about the shifting demographics of the dining room. I cannot understand why management continues admitting them, he muttered to fellow server Amanda the previous week. This establishment used to maintain real standards. Amanda had attempted to ignore his inflammatory comments, but they were escalating. Brad seemed to take personal affront whenever he served black customers, particularly those who obviously possess wealth. It challenged something fundamental in his worldview, the conviction that people resembling him were inherently superior to people who didn't. Tonight, observing Zara sitting alone at the premium corner table, wearing what was unmistakably designer clothing and jewelry that reflected light from the chandelier above, Brad experienced that familiar wave of resentment. Who did she think she was, occupying space that belonged to legitimate customers? Manager Susan Williams had observed Brad's troubling attitude, but hadn't confronted it directly. As a white woman who climbed through the hospitality industry, she'd learned to evade confrontations that might be characterized as political. When other staff members mentioned Brad's problematic comments, she'd dismiss them as personality differences rather than recognizing the deeper pattern of systematic discrimination. Meanwhile, 4 floors above the dining room, Isaiah Mitchell was concluding the quarterly board meeting for Mitchell Hospitality Group. As chairman and CEO, he'd expanded the family enterprise from the original Heritage restaurant into an impressive portfolio of 89 premium properties throughout the Southeast. Tonight's meeting had concentrated on expansion strategies for the Carolinas, but Isaiah's thoughts kept drifting to the anniversary dinner awaiting him downstairs. "Gentlemen, I believe we've addressed everything for tonight," Isaiah said, closing his leather portfolio. "Same time next quarter. Before you leave, Isaiah," board member Robert Carter interjected, "congratulations again on the anniversary. 5 years with Zara. She's an extraordinary woman." Isaiah smiled genuinely. "She is indeed, and she's been remarkably patient with these extended meetings." As the board members departed, Isaiah checked his Rolex. 7:47 p.m. Zara had texted confirming her arrival, and he could visualize her sitting at their special table, probably browsing baby name applications or reviewing educational district reports for her position as principal. He had absolutely no awareness that 3 floors below, his wife was about to experience the kind of humiliation that would transform everything. Brad Morrison approached Zara's table with the kind of intentional slowness that made his hostility unmistakable. He'd been monitoring her for 20 minutes, allowing other tables to receive immediate service while she sat waiting. And now he was prepared to make his statement. Well, he said, pausing beside her chair with his arms folded. "Look what we have here. Let me guess. You're waiting for your baby daddy to arrive with his illegal money." Zara looked up from her phone, her expression composed but vigilant. "I beg your pardon?" "Oh, don't pretend innocence with me. Sweetheart, I know precisely what you are." Brad's voice projected just loudly enough for adjacent tables to hear. "You think that knockoff dress and those fake diamond earrings make you sophisticated? This isn't the project's princess." The elderly couple at the neighboring table stopped eating, their silverware frozen midway to their mouths. A businessman in the corner booth retrieved his phone and began recording. The atmosphere in the dining room shifted as conversation ceased and all attention concentrated on the unfolding confrontation. Zara set down her phone deliberately. "I have a reservation. My name is Zara Mitchell, and I'm waiting for my husband to join me for our anniversary dinner." "Anniversary?" Brad released a harsh laugh. "Right. Let me guess. He's some wannabe rapper who purchased you that fake ring from a pawn shop. Or maybe he's dealing something stronger than marijuana these days. You need to step away from my table now." Zara's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath the composure. "Or what?" "You'll call your probation officer." Brad leaned closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Listen, ghetto queen. I don't know how you manipulated your way past the hostess, but this restaurant maintains standards. Real standards, not welfare standards." Jessica, the hostess, had noticed a disturbance and was approaching, but Brad waved her away. "It's fine, Jess. Just explaining to our guests that she might be more comfortable somewhere else." "Sir, please lower your voice," Zara said, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "You're disturbing other diners." "Disturbing other diners?" Brad's face flushed crimson. "You're the disturbance here. You and whatever thug impregnated you are exactly what's wrong with this neighborhood. This used to be a respectable establishment before they started admitting your kind." The businessman recording stood up. "Hey, that's enough, man. Stay out of this." Brad snapped. "This is between me and Welfare Barbie here." Zara began to stand, but Brad moved closer, blocking her path. "Where do you think you're going? You haven't paid for that water you've been nursing for the past 20 minutes. What's wrong? Government benefits card not working tonight? Move away from my table." Each word emerged like a blade. "Make me princess. What are you going to do? Call the baby daddy? Let me guess. He's in county jail again." That's when Zara's composure finally fractured. "My husband owns more than you'll ever witness in your pathetic existence, you ignorant racist." Brad threw back his head and laughed. "Right, and I'm sure he's a real upstanding citizen. Let me guess. Gold teeth, face tattoos, pants hanging off his waist. Or maybe he's one of those drug dealers who thinks a BMW makes him legitimate." The recording businessman stepped closer. "Dude, you need to stop right now. This is completely unacceptable. Mind your own business. Sir, Brad snarled. This is my section, my restaurant, and I decide who belongs here. Zara was fully standing now, her silk dress catching the light from the chandelier above. Despite the humiliation, despite the rage building in her chest, she maintained her dignity. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Brad said, his voice rising. I'm dealing with another ghetto princess who thinks she can waltz into a place like this and demand to be treated like she belongs. Well, newsflash, sweetheart. You don't belong here. You belong at fast food restaurants. You belong at chicken joints. You belong anywhere but here. The entire dining room had gone silent now. Servers stood frozen by the kitchen entrances. The maitre d' was frantically attempting to reach manager Susan on his radio. Several diners had their phones out recording the spectacle. This conversation is over, Zara said firmly. I'm going to speak with your manager. Good luck with that, princess. Susan's not going to side with some project rat who's trying to scam a free meal. That's when Zara made her critical mistake. She reached for her water glass to take a sip, attempting to calm herself before the situation escalated further. Brad saw the movement and interpreted it as aggression. Oh, what's that? Are you reaching for something? Planning to throw that water at me, ghetto girl? I'm trying to take a drink, Zara said quietly. Please, just leave me alone. Too late for that, princess. You want to act like you belong here? Let me show you how we treat people who don't know their place. Before anyone could react, Brad snatched the crystal water pitcher from the serving station behind him. Ice water sloshed dangerously close to the rim as he raised it above his head. Maybe this will cool down that attitude of yours, he snarled. The businessman lunged forward. Don't you dare. But Brad was already in motion. He hurled the entire contents of the pitcher directly at Zara's face with a violence that made several women in the dining room gasp. Ice water exploded across her features, soaking her carefully styled hair and streaming down her silk dress. The cold shock made her stumble backward, water dripping from her eyelashes onto the marble floor. The crystal pitcher shattered as it hit the ground, sending shards skittering across the dining room. For a moment, the only sound was water dripping in the soft tinkle of settling glass. Brad stood there breathing hard, his chest heaving with satisfaction and adrenaline. There, now you look more like what you really are, a wet rat who doesn't belong in decent society. But as Zara slowly wiped water from her eyes and stood to her full height, something dangerous and powerful flickered across her face. Water dripped from her chin, but her voice when she spoke was deadly calm. You just signed your own death warrant. The businessman was still recording. Jessica, the hostess, stood frozen by the bar. Other diners sat in stunned silence, some crying, others shaking their heads in disbelief. And somewhere in the chaos, no one noticed the private elevator in the far corner of the restaurant beginning its descent from the executive floors above. Manager Susan Williams finally appeared, having been alerted by the maitre d's frantic radio calls. She took in the scene, the shattered glass, the soaking wet pregnant woman, Brad standing defiantly with his arms crossed, and dozens of shocked diners with their phones out recording everything. What on earth is going on here? Susan demanded, though her tone suggested she was more concerned about the restaurant's reputation than the obvious assault that had just occurred. Just handling the situation, Susan, Brad said smugly, had to explain to our guest that this establishment has certain standards. He threw water at a pregnant woman. The businessman shouted, his phone still recording. I got the whole thing on video. Susan's face went pale as she realized the magnitude of what had happened. In the age of social media, this could destroy the restaurant's reputation within hours. But instead of immediately firing Brad and apologizing to Zara, she made a calculation that would prove to be catastrophically wrong. I'm sure this was all a misunderstanding, Susan said carefully. Perhaps if we could all just calm down. A misunderstanding? Zara's voice cut through the air like ice. Water was still dripping from her hair onto her ruined dress. Your employee just assaulted a pregnant woman while hurling racial slurs, and you call it misunderstanding? Now, let's not throw around accusations, Susan said, glancing nervously at the recording phones. I'm sure Brad didn't mean. I meant every word, Brad interrupted proudly. Someone had to put her in her place. Susan shot him a warning look. But the damage was done. The phones were recording everything, and the situation was spiraling completely out of control. Ma'am, Susan said to Zara, perhaps it would be best if you left quietly. We could comp your water. Comp my water. Zara's laugh was hollow and dangerous. You think this is about money? Well, what else would it be about? Brad sneered. That's all your people ever care about. Getting something for free. The private elevator dinged softly in the background, but the sound was lost in the chaos of the moment. No one noticed the doors sliding open. No one saw the impeccably dressed black man in the tailored suit stepping into the dining room. No one except Zara, whose expression suddenly shifted from rage to something that looked almost like pity. You have no idea what you've just done, she said quietly, her eyes fixed on something behind Brad's shoulder. But you're about to find out. The dining room erupted as phones emerged from every table. The businessman who'd recorded everything was already uploading to Twitter. Racist waiter assaults pregnant black woman at Heritage Restaurant, hashtag pregnant while black, hashtag Heritage Restaurant. Within minutes, the video exploded across social media. Local Atlanta influencers shared it with outraged commentary. The notifications on the businessman's phone wouldn't stop pinging. 50 shares, then 100, then 500. Zara stood amid the chaos, water still dripping from her designer dress onto the marble floor. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and made one crucial call. Isaiah, I need you downstairs now. Zara, what's wrong? I was just finishing. Someone threw water in my face and called me ghetto trash in front of the entire restaurant. Her voice was steady still. Get down here immediately. Silence. Then Isaiah's voice came back deadly quiet. I'm on my way. Brad was celebrating what he saw as victory, turning to fellow servers with a satisfied grin. See, sometimes you just have to show people their place. Bet she won't try this again. Server Amanda stared at him in horror. Brad, she's pregnant. What's wrong with you? Being pregnant doesn't give you special rights to eat where you don't belong. Manager Susan Williams was in full panic mode. 3 news stations had already called about the viral video. Channel 2, Channel 5, and Channel 11 were sending crews. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution wanted a statement. Brad, go home, Susan said quietly. Take the night off. What? Why? I was protecting the restaurant's reputation. Just go. I'll call you tomorrow. But Brad wasn't finished basking in his moment. This is ridiculous. Susan, you know I was right. Look at her. Obviously doesn't belong here. Someone had to take a stand against. The private elevator dinged softly. Isaiah Mitchell stepped into the dining room, and everything changed. Tall, commanding, wearing a charcoal suit that screamed wealth and power. He moved with the kind of presence that made people notice. His dark eyes swept the scene. Broken glass, his wife-soaked dress, shocked diners, and his jaw tightened. Several senior staff members immediately straightened. Good evening, Mr. Mitchell, the maitre d', said nervously. Isaiah ignored the greeting. His focus was entirely on Zara, standing by their table with water still streaming from her hair. He crossed to her quickly, his expensive shoes crunching on glass fragments. Are you hurt? His hands gently checked her face for injuries. I'm fine. The baby's fine, but Isaiah, I saw the video. It's already everywhere. His voice was calm with dangerous undertones. Who? Zara nodded toward Brad, still arguing with Susan about being sent home. The waiter, Brad. Isaiah's gaze found Brad, and for a moment his expression was unreadable. Then he turned back to Zara. Go to the car. Have Marcus drive you home. What are you going to do? Handle this properly. As Zara collected her purse, Isaiah pulled out his phone. He made 3 rapid calls, security, legal, and crisis PR from Mitchell Hospitality Group. The dining room watched a well-dressed black man making business calls. They had no idea they were witnessing the chairman and CEO of the company that owned this restaurant and 88 others. They were about to find out. Meanwhile, the social media storm was intensifying. Hashtag Heritage Restaurant was trending in Atlanta. Local civil rights leaders were already posting responses. The Georgia NAACP had shared the video with a statement about unacceptable discrimination in public accommodations. Brad finally noticed Isaiah's presence and sneered to Amanda. Great, now the baby daddy's here. Probably going to try to intimidate us with his fake tough guy act. Susan was fielding her fifth media call when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The way the senior staff was behaving around the black man in the expensive suit wasn't normal deference to a wealthy customer. It was the kind of nervous respect reserved for someone much more important. Who is that? She whispered to the maitre d'. The maitre d' looked at her with surprise. That's Mr. Mitchell, ma'am. He was in the board meeting upstairs. Board meeting? Susan's voice cracked slightly. Yes, ma'am. The quarterly Mitchell Hospitality Group meeting. The color drained from Susan's face as the implications hit her. She looked across the dining room at Isaiah, who had finished his calls and was now walking deliberately toward where Brad stood. The storm was about to break, and none of them were prepared for what was coming. Isaiah Mitchell walked across the dining room with the measured pace of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated for maximum impact. The expensive Italian leather of his shoes clicked against the marble floor as he approached the cluster of staff members near the kitchen entrance. Brad was still complaining loudly to anyone who would listen. I don't care what some lawyer says. I was protecting this place's reputation. We can't just let anyone walk in here. Excuse me. Isaiah's voice cut through Brad's rant like a blade. Brad turned around, his face twisted with annoyance. Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is staff business. Why don't you go check on your baby mama and leave the real work to? My name is Isaiah Mitchell. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. And I believe we need to have a conversation. Mitchell, Brad laughed harshly. Right, and I'm supposed to be impressed by that. Let me guess. You're some wannabe rapper or drug dealer who thinks throwing around a fake name makes you important. The maitre d' stepped forward nervously. Sir, perhaps you should. No. Isaiah raised a hand, his eyes never leaving Brad's face. Let him finish. I want to hear exactly what he thinks about my family. Your family? Brad's grin widened. Oh, this is rich. What's next? You going to tell me you're some kind of millionaire? That you drive a Bentley? That you own property in Buckhead? Actually, Isaiah said calmly, I own considerably more than that. He gestured toward the wall behind Brad where the black and white photographs hung in their antique frames. Do you see that picture there? The one from 1955? Brad glanced dismissively at the family portrait. 3 generations of well-dressed black men standing proudly in front of the restaurant's original facade. Yeah, so some old picture from when this place was probably a barbershop or something. That's my grandfather, Ezekiel Mitchell, who built this restaurant in 1952. Isaiah's voice remained steady, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. The man next to him is my father, David Mitchell, who expanded the business through the civil rights era when black families couldn't eat anywhere else in this city. Brad's smirk faltered slightly, but his arrogance held firm. Right, and I suppose you're going to tell me that makes you some kind of... The man on the right is me, taken on my 21st birthday when I officially joined the family business. Isaiah stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. The business that now operates 89 premium properties across the Southeast. The dining room had gone completely silent. Every conversation had stopped. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to watch the confrontation unfold. Manager Susan Williams pushed through the crowd, her face pale with growing realization. Mr. Mitchell, I had no idea you were the owner of this establishment. Isaiah's gaze never left Brad's face, which was beginning to show the first signs of uncertainty. The chairman and CEO of Mitchell Hospitality Group, the man who signs your paychecks. Brad's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's impossible. You're just some thug who what? Isaiah's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. Who built a hospitality empire worth $300 million. Who employs over 4,000 people across 6 states. Who just watched an employee assault my pregnant wife on our wedding anniversary. The blood drained from Brad's face as the full magnitude of his mistake began to dawn on him. I didn't know. I mean, how was I supposed to know what? That a black woman might actually belong in a restaurant built by black hands? That she might be married to someone with power? That she might have every right to eat in a place her family helped create? Isaiah turned to address the entire dining room, his voice rising with controlled fury. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption to your evening. My name is Isaiah Mitchell, and I am the owner of the Heritage Restaurant. What you just witnessed, the assault on my wife, the racial slurs, the assumption that she didn't belong here, this is not who we are. This is not what this restaurant stands for. He gestured again to the historical photographs lining the walls. This establishment was built as a safe haven during segregation. When black families couldn't get service anywhere else in Atlanta, they came here. When civil rights leaders needed a place to meet and plan, they sat at these very tables. Dr. King himself ate Sunday dinner in this dining room. The weight of history pressed down on everyone present. Several diners looked ashamed, others amazed, all of them riveted by the revelation unfolding before them. And tonight, Isaiah continued, an employee of this restaurant, my restaurant, threw water in my pregnant wife's face and told her she belonged at McDonald's, told her she was ghetto trash, told her that her baby was probably fathered by a drug dealer. Brad tried to speak, but Isaiah held up a hand for silence. The man who did this has been working here for 3 months. 3 months in a restaurant where his paycheck is signed by the very family he just humiliated. 3 months serving customers in a dining room built by the grandfather of the woman he just assaulted. Susan Williams stepped forward desperately. Mr. Mitchell, I had no idea this was happening. If I had known about Brad's behavior, you did know. Isaiah's words hit like a physical blow. Other staff members reported his comments. Customers complained about his service. You chose to look the other way because addressing racism is uncomfortable. He turned back to Brad, who was now visibly shaking. You want to know if my wife belonged here? Let me tell you what belongs here. Respect belongs here. Dignity belongs here. The legacy of people who fought and died for the right to be treated as human beings belongs here. Isaiah pulled out his phone and held up the screen showing the viral video that now had over 10,000 shares. What doesn't belong here is hatred. What doesn't belong here is ignorance. And what definitely doesn't belong here is you. The silence that followed was deafening. Brad's world had just collapsed around him, and he finally understood the true scope of his catastrophic mistake. Security will escort you from the premises. Isaiah said quietly, your employment is terminated effective immediately. You will never work for any Mitchell Hospitality Group property again. As Brad was led away, Isaiah turned to his wife, who had been watching from near the entrance. Water still clung to her hair, but her head was held high with unmistakable pride. Happy anniversary, darling, he said softly. I'm sorry our special evening was ruined. It wasn't ruined, Zara replied, walking over to take his hand. It was just getting started. The removal of Brad from the premises was just the beginning. As security escorted the disgraced waiter through the kitchen exit, Isaiah turned his attention to the packed dining room, where dozens of phones were still recording every word. Ladies and gentlemen, Isaiah announced, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to addressing boardrooms and shareholders. What happened here tonight represents a complete failure of our values and training. I want each of you to understand that this incident will be investigated thoroughly, and changes will be implemented immediately. He gestured to Susan Williams, who stood frozen near the bar, her face ashen with the realization that her career was hanging by a thread. Miss Williams, please join me. We need to discuss how an employee with multiple discrimination complaints was allowed to continue working here. Susan approached reluctantly, her hand shaking as she clutched her radio. Mr. Mitchell, I can explain. You'll have your chance. But first, I want to hear from the staff who tried to report Brad's behavior. Isaiah's gaze swept across the assembled servers and kitchen workers. Amanda, please step forward. Amanda hesitated, then walked toward them with nervous determination. Mr. Mitchell, I tried to tell Susan about the things Brad was saying, about how he treated black customers differently, how he would complain about serving tables with those people on them. When did you first report this? Isaiah asked, About 6 weeks ago, Brad made a comment about a black family with children, said they were probably going to dine and dash, and that we should watch them carefully. I told Susan immediately. Isaiah turned to Susan. And what action did you take? Susan's voice was barely audible. I told Amanda that Brad was probably just having a bad day, that she shouldn't take his comments so seriously. A bad day? Isaiah repeated the words slowly, letting their inadequacy hang in the air. What about the second report? Amanda continued, emboldened by Isaiah's attention. Last month, Brad refused to serve a black couple who were celebrating their engagement. He told me they looked like trouble and made me take their table instead. When I told Susan, she said it was just a personality conflict. And the third incident, 2 weeks ago, Brad told a black businessman that the restaurant was full even though we had 6 empty tables. The customer left, and Brad bragged about keeping the riff-raff out. I reported that, too. Isaiah's jaw tightened as he processed the systematic nature of the discrimination. This wasn't one bad night. It was a pattern of behavior that had been enabled and ignored by management. Miss Williams, Isaiah said, his voice deadly calm. You're telling me that in 3 separate incidents over 2 months, you chose to dismiss reports of racist behavior rather than investigate or take corrective action. I didn't want to make assumptions about Brad's motivations. I was trying to be fair to everyone. Fair to everyone? Zara's voice cut through the air like a whip as she stepped forward, water still dripping from her ruined dress. Was it fair when your employee called me ghetto trash? Was it fair when he threw water in my face? Was it fair when he told me my husband was probably a drug dealer? Susan's face crumpled. Mrs. Mitchell, I am so deeply sorry. If I had known it would escalate to this. You did know. Isaiah's words were final. You knew and you chose to protect a racist employee rather than the customers and staff he was harming. That makes you complicit in tonight's assault. He turned to address the entire restaurant again. I want everyone here to understand something. Racism isn't just a dramatic incident you witnessed tonight. Racism is also the manager who ignores complaints because investigating them is uncomfortable. Racism is a system that protects perpetrators and silences victims. Isaiah pulled out his phone and dialed a number. This is Isaiah Mitchell. I need an emergency meeting of the executive team. Yes, tonight. The Heritage main dining room. 1 hour. As he ended the call, another server, an older black woman named Dorothy, stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, sir, I've been working here for 15 years, since before you took over from your father. I want you to know that most of us love this place. We're proud to work here. But lately, go on, Dorothy. Lately, it's been harder. Not just Brad, but the way some customers talk to us. The way some managers handle complaints. It feels like we're going backward instead of forward. Isaiah nodded gravely. Dorothy, I want you to know that your voice matters. All of your voices matter. And starting tonight, we're going to make sure they're heard. He turned to the maitre d'. Marcus, I want you to coordinate with security to preserve all surveillance footage from tonight. I also want statements from every staff member who witnessed Brad's behavior, not just tonight, but over the past 3 months. Yes, sir. And I want the personnel files for every employee who has been terminated or disciplined for customer complaints in the past year. I want to see if there's a pattern of protecting certain employees while dismissing others. As Isaiah spoke, his phone buzzed continuously with notifications. The viral video had now reached national attention. CNN had picked up the story. The Washington Post was calling for a statement. #Heritage Restaurant was trending nationwide with thousands of people sharing their own stories of discrimination in restaurants and hotels. Mr. Mitchell, the businessman who had recorded the original incident, approached tentatively. I'm David Carter, and I filmed what happened tonight. I want you to know that I'll cooperate fully with any investigation. What that man did to your wife was unconscionable. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Your video may have prevented this from being covered up. Other customers began approaching, some to offer support, others to share their own experiences. An elderly black couple revealed that they had stopped coming to the Heritage months ago because of poor treatment from staff. A young white woman admitted that she had witnessed Brad making inappropriate comments before, but had been too uncomfortable to report it. Susan Williams made one last desperate attempt to save her position. "Mr. Mitchell, please understand that I never intended for any of this to happen. I've worked in hospitality for 20 years. I'm not a racist person." "Miss Williams," Isaiah interrupted, "intent is not the same as impact. Your intent may not have been to enable racism, but that's exactly what you did. And the impact was that my pregnant wife was assaulted in my own restaurant." He paused, looking around the dining room at the faces watching him. Staff members fearful for their jobs, customers shocked by what they'd witnessed, media representatives who had started arriving to cover the story. Effective immediately, Susan Williams is suspended pending a full investigation. Dorothy Washington will serve as interim manager while we conduct a comprehensive review of our policies and procedures. Dorothy's eyes widen in surprise and gratitude. "Sir, thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't. And Dorothy, your first priority is creating an environment where every employee feels safe reporting discrimination and every customer feels welcome regardless of their race." As if summoned by his words, Isaiah's executive team began arriving. The regional director, the head of human resources, the company's chief legal counsel, and the crisis management specialists. They had clearly been briefed on the situation during their drive over, and their faces showed the gravity of what the company was facing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isaiah addressed his executives, "we have a crisis that goes far beyond tonight's incident. We have a systemic failure in our management training, our reporting procedures, and our commitment to the values this company was founded on." He gestured to the historical photographs on the walls. "My grandfather built this restaurant so that black families would have a place where they were treated with dignity. Tonight, we failed that mission spectacularly, but we're going to fix it." The head of human resources, Maria Santos, stepped forward. "Isaiah, we're prepared to implement immediate changes. Mandatory bias training for all staff, revised reporting procedures, and a complete overhaul of our hiring and promotion criteria." "Good, but that's just the beginning." Isaiah's voice carried the weight of someone making decisions that would affect thousands of employees and millions in revenue. "I want an independent audit of every property in our portfolio. I want to know if this behavior exists elsewhere, and I want it stopped." He turned back to Zara, who had been standing quietly beside him throughout the confrontation. Despite her soaked dress and the trauma of the evening, she radiated strength and dignity. "Darling, would you like to say anything?" Zara looked out the crowd of staff, customers, and executives, then spoke with quiet power. "What happened to me tonight happens to countless black women every day. The difference is that I had the privilege of a husband who could demand accountability. But every woman deserves that protection. Every family deserves to eat dinner without fear of humiliation." She paused, her hand resting on her belly. "I want my daughter to grow up in a world where her worth isn't questioned because of her skin color, where she can walk into any restaurant and be treated with respect. Tonight was painful, but if it leads to real change, then maybe it was worth it." The dining room erupted in spontaneous applause led by Dorothy and the other staff members. Even some of the customers who had initially seemed uncomfortable with the confrontation were now clapping with genuine appreciation. Isaiah wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Thank you all for witnessing this moment. Change is hard, but it's necessary, and it starts tonight." The transformation of the Heritage restaurant began immediately. Within an hour of Isaiah's announcement, news vans lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the Atlanta skyline like mechanical flowers seeking light. Inside, the dining room had become a command center for corporate accountability. Isaiah stood before the assembled crowd, his executive team, remaining staff, lingering customers, and a handful of local reporters who had been granted access. The historical photographs of his family seemed to watch from the walls as he prepared to deliver judgment. "Ladies and gentlemen, what happened here tonight was not an isolated incident. It was a predictable result of a system that prioritized comfort over justice, silence over accountability." His voice carried the weight of 3 generations of struggle and success. "That system ends now." He turned to his legal counsel, who stepped forward with a tablet containing the preliminary investigation results. "In the past hour, we've interviewed 12 current employees and reviewed personnel files going back 6 months. What we discovered is deeply troubling. Brad Morrison was hired despite failing the diversity sensitivity portion of his interview. His supervisor noted concerns about his cultural fit, but was overruled by management who prioritized his previous experience at upscale establishments. In his 3 months here, he received 7 formal complaints from customers and coworkers about discriminatory behavior. The crowd stirred uneasily as the scope of the institutional failure became clear. Manager Susan Williams not only failed to act on these complaints, but actively discouraged staff from reporting Brad's behavior. She told employees that personality conflicts weren't a concern and that they should handle it themselves rather than create paperwork. Isaiah's jaw tightened as he processed this information publicly. This represents a complete betrayal of our company values and a legacy this restaurant was built on. Dorothy Washington, the newly appointed interim manager, stepped forward with her own revelations. Mr. Mitchell, I've been talking to the staff, and there's more. Brad wasn't the only problem. We've had 3 other employees quit in the past 2 months because they were tired of witnessing discrimination and having their complaints ignored. Who were these employees? 2 black servers and 1 Latino busboy. All of them tried to report inappropriate behavior before they left. All of them were told it wasn't worth pursuing. The magnitude of the systematic failure was staggering. This wasn't one racist waiter. It was an entire management structure that had failed to protect both employees and customers. Isaiah pulled out his phone and made a public call to the company's board of directors, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. This is Isaiah. I'm implementing immediate emergency protocols across all 89 properties. Every manager will undergo mandatory retraining. Every employee will be re-interviewed about workplace conditions. Any property that shows similar patterns will face complete management restructuring. The board member's voice crackled through the speaker. Isaiah, the financial implications of this could be enormous. Are you sure? I'm absolutely sure. The financial implications of continuing to enable racism will be far worse. Isaiah's voice brooked no argument. We either live up to our values or we don't deserve to be in business. He ended the call and turned back to the assembled crowd. Effective immediately, the Heritage Restaurant will close for 1 week. During that time, every employee will participate in comprehensive sensitivity training. New reporting procedures will be implemented, and a community oversight board will be established to ensure accountability going forward. Zara stepped forward, her ruined dress now a symbol of both violation and vindication. I want to add something. Tonight was humiliating and traumatic, but it was also illuminating. How many other families have been treated this way? How many other pregnant women have been called names and made to feel unwelcome? She looked directly at the cameras, recording the moment. I'm announcing the creation of the Heritage Justice Fund, which will provide legal support for individuals who face discrimination in public accommodations. No one should have to be married to a CEO to receive basic human dignity. The applause that followed was thunderous, led by the staff members who had lived with Brad's behavior for months and the customers who had witnessed the evening's transformation. Isaiah wrapped his arm around his wife as the crowd began to disperse. Ready to go home, Mrs. Mitchell? More than ready. But Isaiah? Yes, I'm proud of what we did here tonight. Your grandfather will be proud, too. As they walked toward the private elevator, passing beneath the family photographs that had borne witness to decades of struggle and progress, Isaiah smiled for the first time all evening. Happy anniversary, darling. I think we just gave our daughter quite a legacy to inherit. 6 months later, Zara Mitchell cradled her newborn daughter in the same corner booth where everything had changed. Little Maya Ezekiel Mitchell, named for her great-grandfather who built the restaurant, slept peacefully as her parents celebrated their first Mother's Day together. The Heritage had reopened to national acclaim after its week-long transformation. The walls now featured not just the original family photographs, but a new exhibition documenting the restaurant's role in Atlanta's civil rights history and its commitment to ongoing social justice. Tour groups visited daily, making it one of the city's most popular educational destinations. Table 12 is asking if they can take a photo with you, Dorothy Washington said, approaching with a warm smile. As the restaurant's permanent general manager, she'd overseen the most successful quarter in the Heritage's 70-year history. It's a family from Chicago. They said they drove 8 hours just to eat here after seeing the story. Zara laughed softly, adjusting Maya's blanket. Tell them we'd be honored. The changes extended far beyond one restaurant. The Heritage Justice Fund had provided legal support to 47 families facing discrimination cases across the Southeast. 3 major hotel chains had adopted Mitchell Hospitality Group's new training protocols. The company's stock price had actually increased as investors recognized the value of authentic corporate responsibility. Isaiah appeared from his meeting with the Community Oversight Board, sliding into the booth beside his wife and daughter. The quarterly review is outstanding. 0 discrimination complaints across all properties. Employee satisfaction at an all-time high, and bookings are up 30%. What about Brad? Zara asked quietly. Still unemployed in the hospitality industry, but he's been attending the diversity education program we funded. His counselor says he's making progress understanding the impact of his actions. It wasn't vindictive satisfaction that Zara felt, but something closer to hope. Real change required transformation, not just punishment. Susan Williams had faced federal civil rights charges for her systematic dismissal of discrimination complaints. During the trial, testimony revealed that she'd ignored over 20 reports of racist behavior across her 15-year career. She'd been sentenced to community service and banned from management positions in public accommodations. Mrs. Mitchell, a young black woman, approached their table nervously. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you. I saw what happened on the video, and it inspired me to report discrimination at my own job. They actually listened this time, and changes were made." Stories like this arrived weekly. Emails, letters, social media messages from people who found courage in the Mitchell family's example. The viral video had become more than entertainment. It had become a catalyst for accountability. Isaiah lifted his daughter gently, marveling at her perfect features. "Your mama changed the world, little one, and someday you'll inherit a better one because of her courage." As they prepared to leave, Zara paused beneath her great-grandfather-in-law's photograph. The dignified man in the 1955 portrait seemed to be smiling at his newest descendant. "Ready to go home?" Isaiah asked. "Actually," Zara said, looking around the transformed dining room, where families of every background shared meals in comfort and safety, "I think we're already there." Have you witnessed discrimination in public spaces? What role do you think businesses should play in creating inclusive environments? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you believe in using privilege and power to create positive change, like this video and subscribe for more stories of justice, accountability, and hope. Together we can build a world where everyone belongs.